Hi, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome. My name is Ysis Lorenna, and today I'm going to be giving you an update on how it's been for us raising bilingual children. I'm originally from Brazil. My native language is Portuguese, but I also speak English fluently, and my husband is British and he only speaks English. I've done a couple of videos already on this subject, so I'll leave them linked in the description box below. But today I'm going to focus on our struggles mainly. So if you are struggling to raise bilingual children, this is the video for you because I'm struggling and I want to share some of my struggles with you guys in case there's people out there with the same struggles, because currently I'm feeling very alone in this struggle. I'm also going to share a couple of methods that I have researched that are specific to our situation where one of the parents only speaks one language and the other parent speaks both languages. And also I'm going to share a few tips to kind of help you still raise your children bilingual even if you're struggling like me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a like if you enjoy it. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with a friend if you think they might enjoy it too. And now let's get straight into the video. I've always known that I wanted to raise my children bilingual, and I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I never knew I was going to find it this difficult. I just find it so hard to include Portuguese in our day-to-day lives because I don't know anyone around me where we live that speaks Portuguese. All of my family is still in Brazil and I don't have any Brazilian friends where I live. So I just don't get to speak Portuguese with anyone else, and to me it feels like it feels forced to start a conversation in Portuguese. I know it shouldn't, but I'm being completely honest, and that's how it does. And to me, the biggest struggle is the fact that everything that I know from being a mum, everything I learned about babies and children, I've learned in English. Sometimes I even find hard to communicate with my family in Brazil about parenting when I'm trying to explain something to them about the way that I do things here, or just general parenting terms like nursery school, things like that I learned here, like when you're breastfeeding, terms like let down and weaning, all of these terms I learned in English, so I find it really difficult to talk about parenting in Portuguese. I find switching from one language to the other so incredibly challenging and confusing, and if you have a bilingual brain you'll understand what I mean. When your whole life is in one language and suddenly you have to flip and go back to another language that doesn't get activated in that place where you live very often. So let me know if you can relate to that struggle. I find that so difficult. I know this video is going to be like, this is so difficult. And if you have a bilingual child and you've done it and you're like, it was really easy for us, then I'm so happy for you, but this is not how it's been for me. All I can do is share my own experience, and hopefully someone out there can relate to this and make me feel less alone in this struggle. Another issue I have is that I feel a lot of pressure for my children to be fully bilingual and to have both languages at a native level, because I'm native in both not like native, but I am native in Portuguese and fluent in English, so why shouldn't my children be able to have both? I find that a lot of that pressure unfortunately comes from people who aren't bilingual or people who don't yet have children. And I'm not trying to say that these people don't know what they're talking about, but it's much harder when you're in that position. I feel like once you're in that position, you're a lot more understanding of the struggles instead of just wondering how those children are not bilingual and why isn't that mum making more of an effort for her children to be bilingual. So yeah, in reality, my children are much better at English than they are in Portuguese. They do know a few things in Portuguese because I keep trying. So whenever I remember or whenever I feel like I can do it, I speak Portuguese to them, but it's not as strict as you would have thought, or as most people would have thought it is. For so many years, I've been so worried about the fact that my children are not fully bilingual and, you know, thinking this is my fault, this is my mistake, and it's if I don't teach them, then who will? And kind of putting all of that pressure, external pressure, onto me to make me feel like if they're not bilingual, then it's my fault and then I'm not doing enough. But then I had enough of that pressure, and I decided to just embrace the fact that my relationship with my children transcends language, and I have a great relationship with my children. So I'm not going to beat myself up anymore for my children not being fully bilingual. I wanted to share with you 2 methods that I learned whilst researching for this video, where you can try and teach your children your native language if you're in a similar situation to mine, where you speak both languages and your partner only speaks one of the languages. So I wrote it down. The first method is called language rotation, and that basically means that you choose maybe 1 or 2 weeks to speak one language, so language A, and then the next 2 weeks you speak language B. So some parents like to mark the changeover between one language to the other with a specific song or a theme in their bedroom or something, just so the children know that the language is changing. And I thought that was so interesting and worth mentioning. If it works for other people out there, or if you've tried this method, please do let me know. Unfortunately, I don't think that method would work for us, but it might work for other people. And the second method that I looked up is called the time and place or context method, and I think that's the one that I used without knowing it was a method. So basically you choose a time, a place in your house, or a context to speak the minority language or the language that you're trying to teach your children, and I do that with bath time. So I've always spoken in Portuguese with my children during bath time. It's a time of the day when they're not distracted by technology or anything else. So they're in the bath, they're playing with their toys, but they're actively listening to what I'm saying. So I like to teach them songs and talk to them as much as I can in Portuguese. So that's my time of the day where I know if I want them to be exposed to Portuguese, this is where I'm going to put my time and effort. And I know it's not a lot. It's only 20 minutes, 15 minutes of our day, but it's something. And you know, you've got to celebrate the small victories and the opportunities that you get to speak that language with your children when you're finding it difficult, like I am. So these were the 2 methods that I found out, and like I said, the second one is better for our family and for me. So now I've got a few tips for you to still teach your children some of your native language if you're in a situation like me where you just can't get past that barrier of trying to do it, not being able to do it, and then just giving up because it's just too complicated and too hard. My first tip is to focus on one thing at a time. So try one song at a time, one nursery rhyme at a time, one word at a time. Get your children to master that word and to know it fully, and then move on to the next one. That for us, for our family, is gold. That's what gets my children to learn the most amount of Portuguese. If I try to teach them too many things at once, it just doesn't work for us. So I focus on one thing at a time and I get them to learn that one fully. So at bath time, I introduce a new song in Portuguese. I sing it for the first few days. They don't even sing it back. And then I start to just ask them to sing with me. So when I know that they know that song fully, I move on to the next one, and the same with phrases and expressions and things like that. My second tip is to have consistent habits. So have something that you always do in your native language, like saying good morning or goodbye in your native language with them. Even if it means you're saying it in both languages, just get that consistent habit of them knowing. With my kids, we always say bom dia, which is good morning in Portuguese, and we always say ciao, which is goodbye in Portuguese. So they know these 2 words and they know it in the right context, which is what's important. So if you try to develop some consistent habits, that might help your children pick up a few more words here and there. My third tip is to ask what something means in the minority language and get your children to repeat that back to you. So like I said, I don't find introducing Portuguese naturally in our lives, but when I do remember it, and if I'm talking about anything, if I'm talking about a car, I will ask my kids, what is car in Portuguese? Even if they don't know it, I will volunteer the information and I'll ask them to say it back to me how I said it. So little bits of that throughout the day are so good for them to learn the correct pronunciation of things in the minority language. I find that that's the hardest thing for my children to learn, because some sounds in Portuguese are not natural for them to say because they have been brought up speaking mostly English. So if I try and trigger those sounds and they train them, they do get better at it. And my last tip, which is something that we're currently doing, is to make use of our existing routines to introduce the minority language. So we have a morning routine and a bedtime routine with our kids, which we do every single day. They know the routine, they know what happens after every single step. So introducing one thing about the minority language within these routines will make them expect it. So now we're saying good morning in Portuguese when we wake up, and if they don't, I always expect them to say it, and they know the look when mummy is expecting them to say bom dia in Portuguese. And in our bedtime routine, I've introduced something that I do with my oldest. He has an alphabet poster on his wall because he just absolutely loves looking at the letters and sounding them out in English. And now I've realized that I can actually use that to teach him some Portuguese as well, because next to each letter, there's a picture of something that starts with that letter in English. And now I'm pointing to each picture and saying their names in Portuguese, and he's sounding it out to me in Portuguese and telling me what they are in English. And he absolutely loves that. It's like one of his favorite little activities to do. I can see his little brain engaging, and the more we do it, the more he remembers what the words sound like. That was, to me, an easy little thing to introduce, which I didn't find it hard. It doesn't require me stopping something that I'm already doing to start teaching them Portuguese. It's already part of our bedtime routine. So that's it for this video. I just wanted to quickly reinforce that if you are struggling, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just remember that the situation now doesn't have to be forever, and you can always revisit your methods. If something that you're doing is not working, try something else when your children are older. Also, don't worry about people saying that they regret not teaching their children their native language, and you have the prime opportunity right now, because every person is different, every family is different. So don't make yourself feel guilty for someone else's experience not having worked and for them wanting it to work for you. If it's not working for you as well, then that's okay too. You can get professional help. You don't have to do it all yourself. If you can enroll your children in a language class, do that. You don't have to take it all upon yourself to do it. But if you can't do that, like I can't do it because I live in a very small village in South Wales, and I don't think there's any courses teaching people Portuguese around where I live. So that really isn't an option for me at the moment, but it might be an option in the future. And I also think that our children will find their own need or their own desire to learn your language, as long as you're passionate about it and you'll make sure that you expose them to the language. Keep trying and keep revisiting the language, and if they find an amazing need for that language, they will find their way into fluency. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very specific to a select group of people who are in the same situation as me, but even if you're not going through the situation, hope you enjoyed understanding a little bit more about the struggles that can exist in families trying to raise their children bilingual. I find that so many people share how they got there and the positive sides of it and how to raise bilingual children, whilst not many people talk about the struggles and when you're not quite raising your children bilingual but you really want to and you're in a difficult situation. So hopefully that will serve as some sort of comfort for people out there who are trying but not quite getting the results that they thought they would be getting. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're new. I post on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays at 7 p.m. If you have a friend who's raising their child bilingual, then share this video with them, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!